If you looked at TBH Taskbar Hero and thought it was just another cute little game running in the corner of your screen, let me tell you, there is much more depth here than meets the eye. The best part is that many of the top strategies aren't obvious at first. It's very easy to waste time, progress the wrong way, or simply overlook systems that make a massive difference in your advancement. In this video, I'll show you 10 advanced tips that actually worked for me, significantly sped up my run, and might help you get much more out of what the game has to offer. I'm Mary, and let's get the video started. For me, this is one of those tips that completely shifts the pace of your account right from the start. Since Taskbar Hero is a miniature idle RPG that sits on your taskbar, letting your heroes fight and gather loot automatically, any increase in group size has a direct impact on how much you evolve while you play, or even while you just leave the game running. That is why I would treat the third hero slot as the absolute highest priority. The reason is simple. Once you start farming with 3 characters, the game hits a different gear. The game's core loop revolves around building setups, exploring regions, and strengthening characters with items and continuous progress, so adding another hero early means multiplying your combat presence, resource gathering, and experience gains all at once. In practice, this is the kind of unlock that makes the beginning feel much more efficient without requiring any complicated execution. I like this tip because it isn't pretty on paper, it is brutally functional. There is even a reference to a 3-hero party composition in the game's structure and community guides, which reinforces that planning your progression around this extra space makes perfect sense. In a game so focused on classes, items, skills, and automation, opening the third slot early gives me the feeling that you stop merely surviving and start truly accelerating the account. Before you try to get fancy with a perfect build, race to get that third hero on the field. After that, almost all farming seems to yield better results. Levels rise with more consistency, and the sense of progress becomes much more satisfying. For the game's current state, this is easily one of the most important tips for any beginner who wants to grow fast. The idea of pairing an archer with a priest provides that sense of security with pressure, because one deals damage and clears waves well, while the other keeps the team alive without you having to play defensively the entire time. The archer seems to be the hero that accelerates the pace of combat with area damage and enough speed to make fights more fluid. When they enter alone, you can already feel the team gaining offensive momentum, but the real value appears when you place the priest behind them, because that is when you stop depending on luck and start playing with consistency. What I like about this combination is that it doesn't feel forced. It isn't a build that only works on paper, it's a duo that naturally fits well in the early and mid-game precisely because it covers 2 common weaknesses of starter compositions: lack of sustain and lack of efficient damage against multiple targets. The third hero becomes almost a personality adjustment for the team, as you can add someone tankier, more aggressive, or even more utility-focused, depending on what is missing. Archer plus Priest is one of those foundations that builds confidence early on and stays strong long enough to be worth the investment. I think it's a great recommendation for anyone who wants to progress without constantly changing formations, because it delivers damage, healing, and flexibility in the same package. Knowing how to use the cube system is, in my opinion, what separates someone who is just running TBH in the background from someone who is actually building something powerful. This system allows you to manually alter and customize your equipment's attributes, choosing exactly where you want to focus your build, whether on critical damage to explode enemies or on defense to endure much longer in the harder stages. What I like most about this mechanic is the control it gives you over the endgame. Since the cube system is one of the pillars of the late game, mastering it means you are no longer relying solely on the luck of random drops. You are modeling your equipment strategically to exploit bonuses, synergies, and specific combinations. In idle games like this, where progression is constant, this type of customization makes all the difference when pushing through difficult content. For those starting to think about real builds, I recommend treating the cube as your primary refinement tool. If you want a crit-focused build, prioritize cubes that increase critical chance, critical damage, and attributes that boost combos. If the goal is to be a tank, focus on cubes that raise defense, health, and resistance. The game has various classes, skills, and builds, and the cube is what allows you to truly adapt all of that to your style. Mastering the cube system is what transforms your game from something passive into something intentional. You stop just letting it run and start making decisions that truly matter for your final progress. If you want to take your account seriously in TBH Taskbar Hero, this is one of the first systems I would put at the top of my priority list after unlocking the third hero slot. At the beginning, we tend to think we can leave the game running offline to farm everything, but the big problem is that farming in offline mode drops 0 chests, and that cuts out a huge chunk of resources we could be accumulating. What I like to emphasize here is that the game doesn't get stuck offline. It keeps working, but you lose one of the most important pillars of progress: normal chests and boss chests. When you prioritize enabling auto-opening for chests during active play, your team continues gaining items, equipment, and materials constantly without you needing to manually open them every time. This trick of offline mode not dropping chests is very common precisely because we come from other idle RPGs where almost everything continues to drop even when outside the game. In TBH, however, the mechanic was designed to encourage you to play actively, even if in short sessions, because that ensures the continuous flow of resources that makes a difference in the mid-game, especially when power requirements start to rise. Do not count on offline mode to give you chests. Count on it only for basic experience and coins. The intelligent strategy is to use active mode with auto-open for normal and boss chests turned on to accumulate real resources while you play. In my humble opinion, this is one of the differences between those who stagnate and those who maintain constant progress in TBH. When you reach brutal difficulty and above, the first thing I did was completely change my mindset regarding the inventory. Forget trying to balance everything. In Brutal Plus, the difficulty scaling is so heavy that trying to be versatile ends up leaving you weak in everything. What really works is specializing each piece of equipment for your class's primary function. If you are DPS, maximize damage per second and crit chance. If you are a tank, focus on specific armor and survival. I realized this the hard way after trying to maintain a safe balance and getting stuck in certain stages. In lower difficulties, being versatile works, but the game punishes you heavily when you aren't optimized. What makes a difference is having an inventory that radically reflects your class's purpose. When you do this, your DPS explodes, taking damage becomes more consistent, and in the end, you rise through difficulties without that feeling that you are fighting against your own build. The most important part of this tip is understanding that each class has a clear function, and the inventory must follow that. It's no use putting defense attributes on a build made to attack fast, nor trying to deal massive damage with a character built to be a tank. In the THB endgame, this specialization is what allows you to break progression limits and start facing the truly hardest challenges. In brutal difficulty and above, stop trying to please all attributes. Choose your class function, focus everything on it, and let the inventory reflect that specialization. It's the kind of change that seems simple, but in practice, it's what will separate you from getting stuck on one difficulty. Man, if you have already spent 3 hours farming the same boss only to see another item drop that is useless for your class, you know exactly the pain I'm talking about. The game is addictive and delightful in that retro pixelated aesthetic, but the RNG can be brutal when you need a specific legendary piece to complete that insane build. Sometimes it feels like the game knows what you want and simply decides not to give it to you. This is where one of the smartest things that players still don't use as much as they should comes in: the Steam community market. Many people think this market is only for game cards or FPS skins, but TBH integrates everything perfectly. That legendary item that dropped for you and is taking up space in your backpack because it's for a class you don't even play? You list it there, set a fair price, and sell it. Simple as that. With the coins you earn by selling those useless drops, you buy exactly what your character is missing. It becomes an intelligent cycle where the time you already invested in the grind transforms into real progress without depending on luck. I particularly love this because it removes that feeling of being a hostage to the game. You start to control the pace of your evolution and build the class the way you want to play, not the way the drop allows. So stop hammering the same dungeon hoping for a miracle. Check out the community market. Filter for your class items and make the money work for you. At the end of the day, TBH is meant to be fun and make you feel powerful, not to become a second job of repeating content until exhaustion. Use the market, complete your legendary set, and go back to enjoying the game as it should be played. Balancing classes isn't just about following a pre-made formula. It's about feeling the rhythm of your party, as if it were an instrument. I remember my first attempts, where everyone rushed to deal damage and I would die before even understanding the attack pattern of the first boss. I then realized that having a hero dedicated to absorbing damage at the front, whether a warrior with a heavy shield or even a paladin with mitigation skills, isn't about being boring. It's about creating the safe space that allows the rest of the team to shine. When you see the tank holding the line while the monsters focus on them, that is when the battle starts to make sense. This warrior at the front does much more than simply lose HP. They control the flow of combat. A good tank doesn't stand still waiting to be hit. They use taunts, position themselves to block paths for more agile monsters, and even create opportunities for group counterattacks. In TBH, I noticed that even a simple tank with damage reduction or enemy slowdown skills transforms encounters that seemed impossible into choreographies where every movement has a purpose. It is at this moment that you stop reacting and start dictating the pace of the fight, feeling that unique satisfaction of watching your plan unfold exactly as you imagined. While the warrior holds the attention, the mage and archer in the rear positions aren't just dealing damage from afar, they're taking advantage of that safety window to maximize their true potential. A mage can cast those long channeling area skills that clear entire waves of enemies, while an archer focused on crits or armor penetration will dismantle the priority targets that the tank is keeping pinned. It is incredible how, upon seeing your allies from afar, executing perfect combinations while the front holds the impact, you understand that damage isn't just about raw numbers. It's about timing, protection, and mutual trust between team members. At the end of the day, this tip of having at least one tank at the front completely changed my experience with TBH. From frustrating matches where I was defeated repeatedly by underestimating the need for protection, I started to look at every encounter as a tactical puzzle to be solved. Who will hold the line? Who will exploit the opening created? This change in perspective not only made the game fairer, but much more engaging, because now every victory feels like true teamwork, where my specific role, whether it be a shield or a bow, has a clear and rewarding impact on the entire journey. Try applying this to your next run and feel the difference at your fingertips. It has happened to me that I bought a legendary item on the Steam market, got all excited, and when I returned to the game, I simply couldn't find it anywhere. The first time I did this in TBH, I nearly had a heart attack thinking I had thrown my money away. I opened the inventory, searched the banks, and even re-logged thinking the game had swallowed my item. If you have been through this, take a deep breath. The thing didn't disappear, it just ended up in a place we naturally ignore. Every time you buy something directly through the Steam market, the game doesn't automatically drop the item into your pocket like it happens with enemy drops. Instead, it sends everything to your mailbox, that little box located in the top right corner of the screen. It is literally a click that we miss because we are accustomed to RPGs that hand everything over. But TBH follows that more old-school logic of you have mail to pick up. So before sending a message on the forum or opening a support ticket thinking you lost your gold, click there in the top right corner. The mailbox keeps not only market items, but also rewards and other game deliveries. When you open it, just accept the item and it finally enters your inventory, ready to equip on your build. Is it an extra step? Yes, but after you internalize this, it becomes a reflex and avoids that mini heart attack every time you make a purchase. What I like about the system is that it gives a sense of actually receiving a package, you know? It makes the market feel integrated into the game world instead of just being a magic window that spawns items out of nowhere. Just remember to check the mail before heading to the next dungeon, because there is nothing worse than buying that perfect weapon and leaving it stuck in the inbox while you get beaten by the boss with old equipment. If you play on PC and have already gone through that moment of pure desperation where the game window simply vanishes from the screen, you know it is a massive headache. It happened to me the other day when I connected the laptop to an external monitor and then went back to the laptop's display. The game stayed there, existing theoretically, but visually in some parallel dimension where I couldn't click on anything. And there's no point in banging your head against the task manager or restarting the PC thinking it's a major bug, because the solution is already hidden in the game's own shortcuts. The first salvation is Shift F11, which resets the window scale instantly. It seems silly, but when you change Windows DPI, switch resolutions, or the game decides to be the size of a postage stamp, this shortcut restores the normal proportion without you needing to dig into a configuration file or delete your save. It is one of those commands that seems like only the developers knew about and forgot to tell us, but it solves 90% of visual problems in 2 seconds. Then there's also Shift F12, which resets the window position. This is the one responsible for bringing the game back when it decides to host a party outside the visible area of your monitor. I have already seen people uninstall and download the game again because of this, when it was just a matter of pressing 2 keys and the game would have appeared back in the center of the screen, as if nothing had happened. If you use multiple monitors or like to alternate between full screen and windowed mode, write these 2 shortcuts on a Post-it note, stick it to your monitor, tattoo it if necessary. Seriously, save this combination, because there is nothing more frustrating than losing progress or having to reconfigure everything because the window disappeared. TBH is a delicious pixelated indie, but like many games of its size, it doesn't have the same automatic resizing features that AAA titles deliver. So instead of fighting technology, use Shift F11 and Shift F12 as your first aid kit. The next time the game pulls a ninja move and vanishes, you already know exactly how to bring it back without losing your sanity. If there is one thing I learned playing TBH, it's that progression can punish you quite quickly if you are hasty. Raising the difficulty too early seems tempting, but the game scales quite aggressively, especially in enemy HP and affixes. So, in practice, it is much more worth it to clear an entire act on normal before even thinking about going up. This gives you a much more solid foundation, avoids that feeling of getting stuck in the middle of the way, and also makes your build more consistent. Another thing that many people end up ignoring at the beginning is white items. You get that urge to start merging everything as soon as you unlock the system, but this can turn into a huge regret later. The best white items are essential for synthesis later on, and if you spent them early, you will miss them when you really need to optimize your build. This is a game of patience. Saving now means being able to grow much more later. And speaking of growth, the beginning of the game practically pushes you towards a very clear focus: drop rate and gold. It might not seem as exciting as direct damage, but this is what truly sustains your progression in the long term. The more you drop and the more gold you accumulate, the more you can use the cube efficiently, and that is when the game truly starts to open up. This whole tip revolves around a more strategic mindset. It's not about going fast, it's about going the right way. TBH rewards those who think long-term, who save resources, and who understand the right time to evolve. If you play calmly at the beginning, the mid and late game become much smoother and much more satisfying as well.